Longest day, longest night. Chapter 13. Overchanneled and under suspicion. Being as unaffected by the sirens as she has been, Spike was at Lyra's side before anybody else, but Trixie reacted faster, reaching out with telekinesis and hauling Lyra up and out of the river's bank. The other unicorn was shivering and had her teeth chattering, was now coated head to hoof in mud and freezing wire as she was laid onto Caritas waiting back. Once she was firmly in place, the ponies, Zebra, and Baby Dragon took off from the river at full speed. Spike hopping once more onto Sakura's back after grabbing Lyra's fallen lyre. "Anybody else having second thoughts about this?" Trixie asked as they galloped, before looking to Sakura. "And why aren't you helping Lyra? Those sirens were going to kill us!" "Yes, you were just standing there talking to yourself." Sakura shot the two of them glares as they finally came to a stop in a clearing far from the river. Most of the snow in it had melted, leaving wet dead grass and mud that reached up to their fetlocks. "I am not immune to the siren's spell," she said. "Without thy mantra, they would have enthralled me as well. This is why she had only 5 to save from a watery grave, rather than 6 from the siren's tricks." Trixie shook her head. "The sirens said that they had met you before. I didn't think that raindrops had to specify this, but you're supposed to be guiding us safely to the palace, not right past a bunch of sirens. If you knew they were going to be there..." Sakura looked indignant. "That river is many miles long," she interrupted, jabbing a hoof in the direction that they had galloped from. "I do not know the range of the siren song, nor could I know where they chose to lair. I did not intentionally bring us there." Trixie opened her mouth to raise another objection, but when she heard Lyra cough from atop Caritas' back. The Zebra probably had some good points, but Trixie didn't have to acknowledge that, and she had more immediate concerns anyway. Trixie trotted over to Caritas and Lyra, looking her fellow unicorn over. Lyra's eyes were closed, and she was breathing in short, quick gasps and still shivering. "Is she going to be alright?" Caritas asked, craning her neck to look at the pony on her back. "What's wrong?" "She's overchanneled," Trixie said, shaking her head again as she stepped back a few feet and looked down to the ground, her horn glowing as she singled out a large section of grass. "Hang on, let me try to dry this." Her spell was interrupted by a burst of green flame across the grass. The other ponies backed away in fright, looking to the flame source and seeing Spike, atop Sakura's back, exhaling as hard as he could. After a moment, he stopped, panting a little. The area of grass that Trixie had singled out was now blackened to a crisp, but thanks to the overall wetness of the clearing, there was no danger of a fire. After a second, he made a curious gesture of extending a hand with fence clenched, except for his thumb, which pointed straight up. "Thanks," Trixie decided, as she removed her cape and laid it across the burned grass, the enchantments in it ensuring that it was in no danger of catching fire, or at least from a few fuel-starved embers that remained. She then took Lyra from Caritas' back and set her atop the ground. "Overchanneled?" Dizzy Dew asked after she was done. "What is that? Like, magically working yourself to exhaustion?" "No," Trixie said, as she took Lyra's lyre from Spike and laid it down next to the prone unicorn. "It's like having 90% of the blood in your body sucked right out while trying to run a marathon." The others recoiled in shock at that, as Trixie continued. "She poured all the magic in her body into what she just did. She's running on fumes right now, basically." "Will she be okay?" Charlie demanded, dropping to her knees next to her friend. Trixie shook her head. "I don't know," she admitted. "She needs magic. If I had an ether, she'd probably be already awake. But right now, all she could do is sleep and recover her magic naturally. It might take hours, or days, or longer." "I could fly back to Ponyville and get an ether," Raindrop suggested. "The hospital would have a few, right?" Trixie grimaced. "Or we could all go back," she began, but was interrupted by Carrot Top. "Wait," she said. "Ether? Like from an ether flower? Trixie blinked. Sort of. Except no. Ether flowers are too rare, so they're really a mix of... They're not rare, Carrot Top interrupted again. I mean, not really rare. They're just hard to get by, since they only grow in the Evergreen, and no pony wants to make a habit of coming here. But they blossom year-round since they feed off of magic rather than sunlight. I could go looking for some. A flower that restores lost magic power, Sakura asked. Tell me the appearance of your claim. I may know it by another name. Blue, red stripes, Carrot Top provided. The petals look sort of like maple leaves. The stem is very toxic, but the petals aren't. They grow low to the ground. In my tongue, this plant is called Oxycoamua, and I am familiar with its power. I know of a grove where we can find this flower. We could be there in half an hour. And it'll still be there, Trixie adds, not wholly trusting Sakura's sense of direction anymore. Some animals won't come along and eat them, will they? Carrot Top and Sakura both shook their heads, however. Like I said, the Earth Pony explained, the stem is poisonous, so most animals stay away. Alright, Shirley said, pointing to herself and then Ditzy. Ditzy and I will stay with Lyra and keep an eye on her. I don't want to move her anymore. Ditzy can take to the air in half an hour and provide a way for Raindrops to find us for when heading back. Got it, Raindrops said with a slight salute, and then while the rest of them turned and galloped off. You weren't serious about giving up, were you? Raindrops asked. Despite the initial speed of their pace, the ground of the Everfree, covered with overgrown roots, mud, and still mounting mist that was now reaching their knees, had slowed their stride quickly. Sakura assured them, however, they were making good time. Despite this, Spike and Sakura seemed to have taken up arguing with each other over something, though in low voices, not entirely equestrian. The three ponies chose not to intercede. Trixie looked to Raindrops. Lyra's been hurt now. This is why I wanted to come here just by myself. You'd be sired food if you had come in alone, Carrot Top pointed out. Or worse, a lot of things that might attack a single pony would leave a group alone. Trixie shivered slightly as she dwelled upon that. Though, also for more natural reasons. She hadn't realized how much she had been relying on her cape to keep her warm. Despite the sunlight being warm enough to melt snow and create fog and mist, it was still quite chilly in the Everfree, something she wasn't really used to dealing with for the past few years, ever since she had first enchanted her cape. At least, she still had her hat. It didn't bear any elements resisting enchantments of its own, but it was keeping her ears warm. So, how do you know about ether flowers anyway? Trixie asked, changing the subject. I tried to grow them once, Carrot Top said, chuckling slightly at the thought. I thought maybe all they need is a little Earth Pony magic and care, but the seeds I managed to find had never even budded until I dug them back up and put them in the Sakura, stop talking! The zebra froze, looking back to Carrot Top curiously, then down. Poking just up and out of the mist was a shoot covered with blue leaves. Sakura's eyes widened and said something else in her native language as she stepped backwards from it. Spike looking equally concerned at the top of her back, eyes very wide. Carrot Top had stopped as well, and said Raindrops to Trixie. What is it? Trixie asked, eyes as wide as every pony else's. Carrot Top was waving a hoof, trying to disperse the fog, but no avail. Raindrops, do you think you could move some of this? Raindrops nodded, rearing up on her hind legs and beating her wings furiously several times in rapid succession. Her natural Pegasus abilities made her far better at moving fog than the others, and in a few moments a large area of the muddy, root-choked ground was revealed. However, where Sakura had been about to step was covered in blue plants, most of them only flatlock high, but some growing much taller. Carrot Top breathed out a sigh of relief, though Sakura's own was larger. Thank you, Carrot Top, the zebra said. I would not have wanted to walk through that foul crop. The Earth Pony nodded before looking to her companions. Poison choke, she explained. Another magical flower. Grows largest in the winter. Its effects are less than fun if it touches you. No kidding, Spike noted in a low voice. From the sound of it, he probably had some kind of personal experience with it. These were not here when last I went this way, Sakura said. Its presence might cause a significant delay. Trixie decided not to raise a point about this being the second time Sakura had managed to nearly lead them to disaster, though not out of a sense of altruism. Trixie may not have been an official part of Night Court until a few days ago, but she had ample opportunity to experience it. Amongst the Night Court, there was a saying, once was a coincidence, twice is a conspiracy. On the other hand, Sakura had nearly wanted to poison Joke herself, and her plan, if it had been one, seemed poorly thought out. One used the poison because it could be done discreetly, with little evidence leading them back to the poisoner. One did not simply lead the hapless victims to a grove of poisonous plants, and then invite them to frolic. Nevertheless, Trixie filed away her suspicions to her interesting folder. Raindrops tried closer to the poisoned Joke, rearing up and beating her wings once more and clearing more fog. The blue patch was large, stretching into direction they had to go further than Raindrops could clear, while also stretching a long ways to the left and right, even as the Pegasus moved to clear as much ground as possible. Nuts! Raindrops proclaimed as she settled back onto her hooves, as Carrot Top and Trixie joined her. This could take a while. Time we don't really have, Trixie pointed out, leaving Lyra, Shirley, and Dizzy Doo by themselves, never mind whatever Corona is up to. What does Poison Joke even do? Raindrops asked. Depends on the pony, Carrot Top noted. It basically takes whatever you're proud of, or something you really want, and invests it somehow, like some kind of cruel joke. It's not poisonous exactly. It won't kill you or really harm you, and it takes hours to set in, but its effects can only be stopped by a special brew, which we can't make this time of year, or really, really powerful magic, which we don't have, or just by wearing off, which takes weeks. We'll just have to find another patch of ether flowers, Spike said, looking to Sakura. Nobody noticed a slight smile on his face. There's another one somewhere, right? Indeed, that is true. One that is hopefully not obstructed by leaves of blue. Sakura responded with a nod as she looked back to the group. But it's 7 hours from here. We will have to hurry, else... Have you gone mad? Carrot Top had taken in a deep breath and closed her eyes, and before Trixie or Raindrops could stop her, looked forward, into the poison Joke. A part of Trixie's mind had registered that Sakura's rhyming habit had been broken in shock, but most of her head was focused on what Carrot Top had done. The Earth Pony opened her eyes, and then let out a long sigh as she turned around. We need those ether flowers as soon as possible, she stated in a determined voice. Like I said, Poison Joke takes hours to set in. Sakura, just give me directions. I'll get them myself, and we can deal with me later, after we save the world. Sakura blinked a few times. Merely travel 10 minutes that way, she said after a moment, still finding shock from her voice as she pointed straight ahead. Until that time, you should be able to gather away. Alright, thanks, Carrot Top said as she turned around and began trotting off. Raindrops and Trixie looked to each other. Then the Poison Joke and Carrot Top, then back to each other. With nearly a simultaneous sigh, both started after Carrot Top, eliciting a gasp of surprise for Sakura and Spike, and prompting Carrot Top to turn around, eyes wide. What are you? Don't ask stupid questions, Raindrops interrupted. You said that the ether flower grows close to the ground, right? You might need my wings to clear away. And you might need my spells for stuff or junk, Trixie said, waving a hoof. We're already on a time limit. Think of this as extra motivation. Besides, we can't have you going off by yourself all martyr-like and making us look bad. For the record, Spike called from Sakura's back, the zebra having not moved an inch since he was still trying to make the 3 ponies make sense. I'm perfectly A-okay with you going off by yourself all martyr-like. Me as Sakura will just stay right here. Understood, Raindrops responded, using a wing that gave a lazy salute before turning back to Carrot Top. Come on, let's get going, the unicorn, Pegasus said, trotting away. The unicorn and Earth Pony soon joined her. You two are idiots, Carrot Top proclaimed as the blue leaves of the Poison Joke brushed against their fetlocks, their knees, and occasionally their barrels. Yeah, we are, Trixie asserted the Earth Pony. Not that you're much better. What if I have a spell that could have gotten us through without having to touch it? Or I have these. Raindrops reminded Carrot Top as she flapped her wings several times. I could have gone after the flowers. Carrot Top looked between Trixie and Raindrops, then hung her head. I didn't think of that, she said morosely. I was just thinking about Lyra. Yes. You're giving a mare to the point of being willing to walk through poison jug for some pony you didn't even know all that well, Trixie said in a dry voice, though a smile appeared on her face as she said that. And we're the stupid mares who followed you because you're rubbing off on us. And making us look bad, Raindrops reminded Trixie. Yeah, that too. Plus, you're the one who pointed out how dangerous it is for a single pony in here, rather than a group. Carrot Top let out a long sigh that before raising her head. Okay, she said, forcing herself to smile. The trio continued in relative silence at that point, soon finding themselves free from the poison joke that had dominated that part of the Everfree Forest. Raindrops beat her wings at regular intervals as it spelled the fog. Then the three of them would begin searching the ground for signs of the red and blue flowers they were looking for. At length, they actually managed to find the grove Sakura had spoken of, set in the shadow of a cliff face where the sunlight probably rarely touched, even then as it moved across the sky. The petals of the flower did indeed look like maple leaves individually, though clustered together in bloom, the appearance was more like a 12-pointed, mostly blue star, with red lines running from the tips of the petals down the stem. The grove was huge, at least as large as the poison joke grove, though compacted together rather than spread out. How many do we need? Raindrops asked as she gingerly poked a few of the flowers. Don't know exactly, Carrot Top admitted as she began using her teeth to tear out the flower petals, carefully avoiding the toxic stem. Trixie offered her hat to carry them. I guess just fill up Trixie's hat? The alicorn took an experimental sniff as Carrot Top, Raindrops, and herself began gathering petals. The flowers smelled a bit like dandelions. Not an unpleasant smell, so she wasn't going to regret this at least. Though a rumbling in her stomach suggested she was going to be hungry for the experience of smelling something normally not available in winter. After several minutes, Trixie's hat was brimming, and the three ponies looked to each other. This was anticlimactic, Trixie said as the three began trotting back to where they had come from. Trixie was using telekinesis to hold her hat aloft. As she reached the edge of the poison joke patch, Trixie continued, I was expecting something more. Things can't be trying to eat us all the time, Carrot Top pointed out. Besides, we'll be getting all the more we could want once the poison joke sets in. Trixie winced at that. Took something she was good at and twisted, huh? Probably every spell she tried to cast would be a fireball or something. Either that, or she becomes so clumsy as to trip over her own hooves. It didn't take the three of them long to find Spike and Sakura again, the two of them being heard before they were seen. Once again, the two seemed to be arguing over something, though their argument quickly died when they spotted something they spotted the returning three. That was fast. I know, made for a nice change, Raindrops noted, as he beat her wings and climbed onto the air as to get a bead on Ditsy Doo. Sakura looked over their haul of ether flowers. With the power these petals can evoke, she noted, looking to Trixie, you perhaps can cure yourself of the poison joke. It would be wise to do so soon, lest the plat soak seal you doom. Doom? Trixie asked. Inspector Mike, does he think? Carrot Top asked. She looked at Trixie. Like I said, whatever it does to you won't be dangerous. I mean, you might shrink down to half your height, your voice might change or something, but it won't be immediately harmful. Trixie blinked a few times as she considered. We'll see how much Lyra needs first. Then we can see what we can do about the rest. Chapter 14. The Letter. Lyra gagged as she felt something unbelievably bitter pressed into her mouth. She made to spit it out, but a pair of hooves clamped her mouth shut. No! Cheerily ordered in a determined voice as she held Lyra's mouth closed. You're eating that! I don't care how it tastes! Grimacing, the unicorn obeyed her captor. Chewing only made whatever she was eating taste worse, but after a moment she was able, barely, to swallow whatever foul thing she had been forced to eat. It's there! She said through clenched teeth, pressing Cheerily's hooves off her mouth as she stood on shaking hooves. That was awful! ran her teeth on her tongue and spat, trying to get the taste off of it, but to no avail. There was only one option then. She trotted from where she had been lying, as it was largely, for some reason, blackened, burnt grass, and bent her head low, ripping up as much grass as possible from the clearing and chewing it thoroughly. On the bright side, if this was an RPG, and if you look down at her magic mirror, you can see that her MP just went up. Did you read? It can't be that bad, Trixie said, as she looked into her hat was so empty. They smelled like dandelions. That's funk! Lyra noted as best she could with a mouthful of grass. After swallowing, not that it helped much, she glared at the 5 ponies who were staring at her hopefully. What? How are you feeling? Dizzy Do asked. Trixie says that you overchanneled. Lyra blinked a few times, looking at her horn as she wheeled some magic through it. It glowed gold, as the sensation of channeling magic felt normal. Fine, she said, indignation at being made to eat whatever those things was disappearing at the sound of the word overchanneled. How long was I out? Only about an hour, Charlie explained, eliciting a sigh of relief from Lyra. It could have been much, much longer. Carrot Top came up with the idea of finding something called an ether flower, and Sakura helped her. Raindrops, Trixie, found some. We fed you the petals while you were asleep. You were just instinctively chewing and swallowing a moment ago. Her body knew it needed magic, and knew that the petals had them, Trixie explained as she telekinetically lifted her key from the ground and then shook it around a little, getting residual moisture and soot from the burned-off grass before replacing it on her back. Looking morosely into her head again, she sighed. So she ate all of them. Lyra's head tilted to the side. How is that a bad thing? To get the ether flowers, we had to walk through Poison Joke, Carrot Top explained. Raindrops and Trixie and me will be fine. It's not lethal, but its effects should begin in just a few hours. The mint unicorn looked between Carrot Top, Raindrops, Trixie, eyes wide. What? Why? Couldn't Raindrops just fly over the poison? Whatever! Carrot Top looked down at that, dejected, but then received a reflectful white bump from Raindrops. Because she's an idiot, Raindrops said, though without any malice in her voice. We're all idiots. We're also on a time limit, Trixie said, turning and looking to Sakura. She was at the edge of the clearing, talking to Spike, who was looking increasingly depressed at whatever it was Sakura had to say. Trixie didn't feel bad, therefore, when she interrupted. We need to get moving again. To the palace, she said. I think I saw it when I was looking for Dizzy Do, Raindrops said, looking around for a moment before pointing. That way, right? The zebra nodded. This way to the ruined castle, she said, turning and beginning to trot, the ponies following her and Spike once more hopping into Sakura's back. Hopefully, we can reach it without further hassle. To this day, no pony quite understood what had possessed Luna or Corona, or rather, Celestia, as this had been prior to her fall from grace, to build the palace of the royal pony sisters in the Everfree Forest. It had been rebuilt and remodeled many times over the millennia, but its foundations was old, older than Equestria as a nation, perhaps even older than the 3 pony nations that preceded Equestria, indeed, possibly older than ponies as a race. With the sun hanging unmoving in the sky, it was difficult to tell what time it was, but if forced to guess, Trixie would have supposed that it was probably past what should have been dawn. Given that, had Corona not been so inconsiderate as to escape from the sun and take over Equestria, around sunrise was when she and everybody else had been planning on going to sleep, having stayed up to celebrate the longest night. She was thoroughly exhausted when the trees parted to reveal a deep ravine, and on the other side, the palace. And underneath the palace was this nice little cave where there was this nice big tree stood. Maybe you girls should go to that one too. The Everfree was quiet and still as the ponies, and Zebra, and Baby Dragon, approached the edge of their side of the ravine. By now, the fog that had been rising throughout the Everfree was reaching up to the ponies' barrels. It was bright, almost painful to look at as it reflected sunlight, adding to the eerie, unearthly sight of the palace. No sound reached their ears other than a low wind and the sound of their own breathing and their own hooves on the snow. The palace looked up, surprisingly small, and seemed to be divided into two sections. Further from the ponies was a tall tower, covered in melting snow and ice, with dead vines running up along the gray stone of the structure. Closer was a shorter but far broader building, likely once the main palace itself, where Luna and Celestia would have held court, for any pony brave enough to journey into the Everfree to outreach them. Here and there, collapsed stone walls and edifices probably indicated that the tower and court had once been part of a single, larger structure, but time and the encroachment of the Everfree's twisted brawls had seen to it that this was no longer the case. There also was the remains of a wooden bridge hanging on the far side of the ravine, the ravages of time having caused its collapse. This was probably just as well, though, as it had prevented Trixie from being stupid enough and trying to cross a 1,000-year-old bridge that nobody had been maintaining. Trixie glanced over the edge of the ravine. The fog from the snow, being heavier than air, was drifting over the edge, preventing her from seeing any further than about 20 feet down. It was impossible to judge just how far it was to the bottom, and it was also too wide to risk jumping. "Guess we need to be carried," she remarked, glancing at the raindrops and Ditzy. Something nagged at Trixie, but she couldn't place what at the moment, probably due to how tired she was. "Guess so," was Raindrop's response, flapping her wings a few times in preparation, before taking wing and scooping up Charlie after she volunteered to go first, along with Lyra and Ditzy's hooves. Trixie took a moment to turn to Sakura and Spike. "Thank you," she said, forcing her suspicions of the zebra aside. After all, Sakura had guided them safely to the palace. Siren and Ponies and Joke runners aside. "I don't know how long we would have been wandering around the Everfree Forest without you." "I assure you, it was no trouble at all," Sakura promised her. "But I must ask, how do you intend to free Equestria from Corona's thrall?" Trixie made a face that was halfway between a grin and a grimace. "I have no idea," she admitted quietly. "The elements of harmony are in there, so—" "Whoa!" Spike interrupted, eyes wide. "I thought they were a Canterlot." Trixie's eyes widened a little, and she shook her head. She was really tired if she let something like that slip. "No," Trixie said, "but, don't tell any pony, okay? I shouldn't have said that." Sakura offered a nod, as Spike scratched the back of his head. "Where are they?" "Can't tell you that either," Trixie said, as Raindrops and Dizzy Dew returned for her and Carrot Top. "I understand your concern," Sakura apologized. "Forgive Spike for asking out of turn." She looked past Trixie, to the palace. "Once that was a place of wonder, but that feeling was torn asunder. It is now a place of pain and regret, one which I would rather forget. We came here to wait at the storm, and a repeat of that time I would not like to perform." "So, the traps still work, huh?" Trixie asked. Sakura inclined her head, and Spike nodded fervently. Trixie herself sighed. "Of course they do." "Yeah, good luck with that," Spike offered, as Raindrops picked up Trixie, and the baby dragon waved goodbye, Sakura doing likewise. Once Trixie was down on the other side, she returned to Jester. She waited a few moments as she watched Sakura and Spike begin walking off. They were soon out of sight due to the fog. She then turned around and looked ahead. There was a worn stairway they had to climb to reach the court. "Okay, here we go," Trixie intoned, beginning to trot up the steps, the other ponies following her. "The first trap is right at the top of the stairs, at the door." "What's it do?" Shirley asked. "It's a pressure plate," Trixie explained, "but also magical. Setting it off will cause a wall of fire to spring up. It's basically a go-away sign. The trap won't hurt anybody, but it'll scare them away." She paused at the door to the court, staring down and making a face. "Unless some ponies set it off already," she intoned, leaning down. The tiles in the front of the door were all depressed, sunken about an inch to the ground, while in a half-circle surrounding them, the door was scorched black. Trixie tentatively put a hoof on the pressure plate, then leaned her weight into it. Nothing happened. "That's not right," she remarked in a low voice. "Sakura and Spike have been here," so Carrot Top pointed out. "They probably set it off." "That's not what's odd," Trixie said. The traps are self-resetting and magically self-sustaining. There shouldn't be any sprung traps. The guard stared at a moment, then shook her mane and trotted into the court before Trixie could stop her. Nothing happened, however, and the Pegasus looked back to the group. Don't question good luck, I guess. She decided. The ponies all wandered into the court, getting their first look at it, or in Trixie's case, her second. Because it was her second, however, her eyes widened silently, thus at how much was out of place. Here, there was a pit in the floor, lying open. Over there, an axe on a pendulum, embedded in a crumbling pillar. Another pillar had fallen over entirely, and would have been blocking the rear exit had its central section not been pushed out of the way by some force. There was an occasional scorch mark, or an S-pin on the floor, but the former were cool to the touch, while on the latter, as it had calcified, it was now harmless. What? No. They're supposed to be death traps! Really clever ones! Trixie trotted over to a pit and looking down. At the bottom were spikes, but no sign of any kind of body, some pony who might have set it off. Maybe, Lyra ventured, animals? Maybe animals set them off? Oh, right, Trixie remarked, rolling her eyes. 995 years or so passed before Luna and me came here, and everything was in place. Then 5 years later, the animals of the Everfree decided to hold a party here or something? Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly, and Trixie let out an exasperated sigh. I'm sorry, she apologized. Sorry, I'm tired. No, not the animals. There's an enchantment woven over the whole area that'll keep the animals out. Some pony came here and set out the traps, and then somehow kept them setting. But why would... The elements! Her eyes widened as she realized. It was taken to combine the efforts of every single unicorn in the capital city, but Celestia was nevertheless being kept out of Canterlot. The white alicorn stood in the sky, directly over the city, but not even bothering to beat her wings in order to remain suspended in the air. Beneath her, the city of Canterlot, which had grown quite large since Celestia last laid eyes upon it, was encased in a violet sphere. And since her arrival, it had been created by a single unicorn, Celestia would have smashed through it long ago. But the white-coated unicorn who was generated, who stood in the courtyard of Canterlot Castle wearing blue and silver armor that Celestia could only assume was the current uniform of the Royal Guard, was being fed a constant stream of medicinal magic by dozens of other unicorns in the Guard, and they were being aided by other unicorns themselves, and they by others, and so on. The result was a magical spirit that could even defy Celestia's power. For a time, anyway. The alicorn set her hostages down on the ground beneath her, enclosing them within a wide circle of fire. She had previously been keeping them suspended in the air with her, but with the crying of foals, and more than a few of the adult ponies as well, had begun to grate on her nerves, and her calls for silence had been disobeyed. She recognized, however, that their disobedience was not intentional, but rather born from the irrational fear that the ponies felt toward her glorious person. As she not already seen to Luna's banishment, her little sister would have much to answer for. Celestia watched forward along the air, standing right up to the edge of the magical bubble and glaring down into it. She was absolutely certain that, if she brought her full power to bear on the bubble, she could smash through it. She was also certain doing so would probably ignite the atmosphere for several miles in every direction, rendering Canterlot and much of the surrounding countryside a fiery wasteland of scorched glass and burned earth. She had to be patient with the ponies, she reminded herself. They had 1,000 years of Luna's lives controlling their actions. She closed her eyes, willing herself forward. No matter how thick the mess, some insects could always find their way through. With magical seals, it was no different, albeit in a more metaphorical sense. She could not bring any true power down on Canterlot while it persisted, but she could project the tiniest portion of her power forward and will it to take on her shape and form inside the barrier, manifesting in front of the unicorn who protected the shield. The reaction was just shy of instantaneous, of course. There were dozens of spears from nearby Pegasus and Earth Pony guards trained on her, and turned her magic toward her avatar. None of them, however, were quite foolish enough to attack her. The shield's creator himself opened his eyes, but his horn continued to glow and project power into Canterlot's barrier. Peace, my subjects! Celestia assured the guard ponies. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I was still on Keraton's voice. Let me get back to Celestia. Peace, my subjects! Celestia assured the guard ponies, bowing her head slightly. I will speak with whomsoever my sister has appointed as her release Luna from the moon. The seal courier interrupted, stamping his hoof as he did so. Celestia blinked several times at the affront. Such disrespect! Did Luna really tolerate such an attitude from her soldiers? Dost thou speak for all of Catalot in my sister's stead? The unicorn offered neither confirmation nor denial. Celestia's eyes narrowed at yet another blatant act of disrespect for a being of her station. Thy seal is of thy oppressive quality, she pressed on, and thou art, no doubt, acting as thou believest thou mayst to protect thy cause. But I speak truly when I said I intend no harm to Catalot, nor her inhabitants. She looked around to the guard ponies surrounding her avatar. Nor her defenders. You are as mayflies standing against a hurricane. Your bravery is of the sort of spoken in legends. But it is misplaced. I would be a poor queen if I attempted to harm my subjects. Now, noble guard, I see no reason. Release Luna from the moon, the unicorn repeated. Now. A second interruption. Celestia's eyes narrowed further as she forced herself not to grow angry with the gnat in front of her. Thou art only mortal. No other pony in Catalot can create the sealed. And it is only through the aid of so many other unicorns that thou create a barrier that I cannot penetrate. Thy helpers shall grow weary. Thou shalt grow weary. But I am immortal. I am the sun. I never need to sleep, nor eat, nor do anything but await for thy failure. On one way or another, I shall enter Catalot. Dost thou really wish for me to do so with flames at my hooves, and my eyes filled with burning rays? Art thou so callous toward the ponies thou art sworn to protect? Only silence greeted Celestia's appeal to reason. Her eyes had slimmed to become narrow slits by this point. Thou! Release Luna from the moon. Now! The guard interrupted a third time, deliberately. He had waited to interrupt Corona in such a fashion. Even worse, even more unbelievably. He had shouted at her! Thou shalt not speak to me in such a manner! Celestia exclaimed as she felt her control on her temper slip. Dost thou not know who I am? Of course I do, Gar responded. You're the tyrant's son, Corona. That is not my name! Celestia shouted, stomping a hoof. It has significantly less force in this mere avatar's body than it would have in person, but it certainly served to actuate her point. Achoo! Yes! I just sneezed! I, Corona, have sneezed! What? Sometimes I can get hay fever, but that is beside the point! That is a lie constructed by my treacherous sister! I am Celestia Fool! I am the sun! I am thy queen! Thou hast no right to bar me from my assuming my throne! It is mine! Equestria is mine! All of it! It is mine! The way in which the white-coated unicorn waited for Celestia to finish shouting at him reminded her far too much of a parent nonchalantly asserting a full temper tantrum. The carefully neutral, almost conciliatory tone to his voice as he spoke next did not help with the impression. Celestia doesn't have a queen, he said. It has a princess, and as long as there's breath in my body, I'll never let you have Catalot. Corona. Celestia snarled, an animalistic, alien expressor and sound for an equine being. Her head dipped somewhat as her wings spread. What is thy name? she inquired in a low voice. The unicorn drew himself up slightly, to his admittedly impressive height, though he was still enormously shorter to Celestia herself. "Shining armor," he declared. The alicorn offered a bright grin that was totally out of place on her otherwise incensed features. 100 years from now," she said, "when ponies walk by the still burning crater that this city will become, when fools turn to their parents and ask what happened here, those parents shall tell their fools of a story, of the hubris and arrogance of one pony who dared to try and hold back the glory of the sun, and the pony that they shall speak of shall be thou, shining armor." Celestia withdrew her avatar from Canterlot, bringing her consciousness back into her own body. Her wings beat once, dragging her backwards away from Canterlot, even as her horn glowed in her hostesses. The ponies taken from Ponyville were wrapped in several layers of protective magic. She had no intention of betraying her word to the Ponyvillians. Besides, she would need ponies to bear witness to the rightful wrath she was about to bring down upon Canterlot. All the better that so many of them were foals. They would carry this divine retribution in their memories for all of their lives. Her horn glowed brighter as she began dragging the pure power of the sun into her being. She would destroy Canterlot utterly, reducing it into the molten rock and blackened glass. She would build a capital elsewhere, after all. It mattered not where she reigned from, and this would probably be the surest way to wipe out the majority of her sister's influence in a single stroke. There was a flash of green in front of Celestia. The alicorn paused in gathering her power, as the flash itself rolled up, a short scroll, which began to fall until Celestia grasped it with her telekinesis. Was it an attempted apology on Shining Armor's part? However much she deserved it, Celestia doubted that the fool's tiny number of brain cells could have interacted enough to realize the depths of his mistakes in speaking to Celestia as he had. Curiosity drove the alicorn forward as he unfurled the scroll and began to read. "O Queen Corona, I am your faithful servant. Toward the signs of your return, I have been most servant. I serve to the everfree forest to bring aid to you. And by serving your side, it's all I pursue. Verse!" Celestia blinked. No pony, blinking several times in confusion. The letter was written in verse? Who had written it? A zebra? The sheer novelty, not to mention the genuine servile tone which was the right and proper way to address her, was even enough to make her ignore that the letter was addressed to the lie that was Corona. "This letter is not how I wish to contact your majesty, but in the everfree forest there is a problem, a travesty. 6 ponies have entered here, and despite my impediments, they are now reaching the harmonious elements." Celestia's grew wide as something. Not fear, but something stabbed at her heart. The elements of harmony? Surely that was what the author of this letter was referring to. Harmonious elements being used to simply continue to rhyme. "I feared that I am no match for these ponies alone, and I beg for forgiveness for drawing you away from your throne. But if these ponies reach the Lunar Palace, their destination, they could, in their foolishness, cause you endless frustration. I implore you, my queen, to come to Everfree Castle before these ponies can cause you a hassle. I offer my services and skills to plethora, your faithful servant, Zakora." Okay, to people who have not read this fic did not see this coming, so I want you all to join with me in going, bum bum bum! Zakora, definitely a zebra name, was displayed to rhyming as well as her devotion. Though the territory of Equestria never reaches to the zebra homeland in the far south, the zebras have always been unsung worshippers, offering constant praise and supplication to the sun, and therefore to Celestia. This particular zebra also had a gift for the understatement, as she thought that the ponies gaining her mortal hopes on the elements would simply be frustrating. Corrupted by dark magic as she had been by Luna, for how else could her wayward sister have turned them upon her? The elements of harmony could conceivably be used to banish her once more, consign her again to 1,000 years of exile on the sun. Celestia's magic reached down, as he grabbed her hostesses and levitated them into the air again, ignoring their screams of terror as she turned and began flying with all speed toward the everfree forest, the site of the old palace. Canterlot could wait. This was a problem to be dealt with. Now.